I would like to welcome everyone to today's webinar, Advanced Niche Marketing Success Stories from Renewed Leaders. This webinar is brought to you by Renewed, the open network for specialized subscription, membership, and event professionals. My name is Stephanie Williford. I am your host for today's event. And during today's presentation, everyone will be on mute. If you're unable to hear or see, you can private message me through the Zoom chat. If you have any questions, please post them anytime in the chat. We'll be answering questions as we go, and there will also be a Q&A at the end. After the presentation, you will have access to the recording at renewed.net/resources. We'll send an email out as soon as that is posted. And we also encourage you guys to continue the discussion in our guild group. That's a great place to share ideas, get insights, ask questions. So for today's session, I'd like to introduce Matthew Cibellis, Principal at Cibellis Solutions, Lisa McInturff, Chief Revenue Officer at BVR, Helen Coetzee, Founder and CEO at MPG, and Bill Dugan, Senior VP of Marketing at Mequoda Systems. Matthew, I'll let you take it away.
Oh, is my audio on? Yes, I believe so. Marketing is difficult, actually, as are events. And so I'm just thrilled that you're all here. This is really great to see you all. And today we're going to discuss about the idea that marketing, I think everybody perceives it as really simple, but we believe that it's actually kind of complicated. And there aren't enough people doing it at most organizations. The ones who are doing it are often fresh out of school. They're more junior folks with less experience than most companies need. So our plan today is that we're going to try to pack in the most we can is pack into this session, give you the hottest ideas that we see that are working. The detail and the strategy behind what we're going to discuss, well, we're happy to fill that in. We can do that with follow-up email in the chat here. We'll leave email addresses of ourselves. And but you can also just ask questions throughout. You can follow up conversation by calling us on our phone numbers or being in touch with us through our websites. Given the digital options that are swamping the marketplace and evolving rapidly, marketing, quote unquote, is constantly changing, and marketers can basically never do enough. There's always more that you can do. And one of the challenges, or maybe two of the challenges, any company owner is thinking is what should I be expecting of my marketers? And what does success look like for us as a company this year with this person or this marketing team? So today, each one of us is going to focus on a different aspect of marketing that we see as very important to ensure that you get the bang for your marketing buck. Bill is going to cover copywriting and email tips and tricks. Helen's going to cover how you make sure that you are emailing as many people as the right people as possible via understanding your total addressable market and using inbound channels to complement email. Lisa's going to cover making the most of what you've got, whether it's staff or marketing resources, especially when looking to generate leads. And I'm going to discuss how you can be resourceful with your events so that you can reach the prospects you need to and to generate real recurring revenue. So let's begin. We'll take 10 minutes for each topic, roughly, and we're going to dive into your questions as soon as you pose them. So Stephanie will be watching that, so keep the questions coming. You can use the chat feature and we'll respond as quickly as possible. Now on with the show. Oh, it's a show and I'm the event guy. So, okay, let's kick off with the latest recommendations about how to optimize your events program. Let's first consider the renewed value in hyper-targeting events. Micro communities within hyper-personalized topic areas can be tapped for both content and sponsorship dollars. During the pandemic and hopefully this shoulder period that we're now dealing with, this transition back to this new abnormal, provides fertile ground right now and more time for C-suite attendees to engage. More time with C-suite attendees. Believe it or not, top-level prospects have been showing up and staying for sponsored, content-rich discussions with their peers. It's been a wonderful outcome of the times that we're in. Some of you may recall sponsored dinners. They were really a big deal for publishing companies. Oh, I'm sorry, do we have a question? They were a big deal for publishing companies from about 2012 to 2017, but the interest waned as the hot new thing got old. It may have been the combination of trudging to fancy restaurants, having dinner with sponsor thought leaders, and generally hobnobbing with peers after a long day of work that got old, or maybe just plain time consuming. However, now with the advent of better list building opportunities, which I'll mention in a different takeaway, one of my current clients is seeing a COVID-friendly ramp up in the roughly 90-minute virtual roundtables that are essentially the same idea. You might consider posing to your clients a thought leadership discussion with birds of a feather who fall within your sponsor's target audience. 3 quick tips: develop a participant briefing book that you share with attendees ahead of time. Email pre-event questions that will be asked ahead of time to your attendees, and provide post-event takeaways. The takeaways are a great way to highlight your sponsor's thought leadership, but also your attendees' words and their feedback about the subject matter. This shows your thanks to the guests who come, and it reminds those who didn't come, oh my God, that could have been my name. That could have been my takeaway, right? Number 2, as these tips go, is slip video production into your marketing. You can do this more effortlessly than ever before, primarily because most of us have been on video now for a year and a half, and during or right after your pre-event prep call, where speakers get acquainted, talk shop, talk about the event flow, weeks prior to your event if possible. Send ahead a script for the moderator to read, or even one of your guests. During that call, you can record the script read aloud with your speaker or moderator on Zoom. Then remove all the non-video participants for a few moments. Have her record herself welcoming folks to attend what they're going to come see or hear in a couple of weeks. You can then embed that video directly into your promotions, or provide a link to your YouTube page, where you can also provide further content there, driving your easy use in your social media. Number 3, develop on-demand experiences after your events through the platform that you've already paid for, and consider adding Canva to your social media mix. Great remarketing solutions are much easier to develop than they were before. 3 ideas that snap to mind is plan to have a point person watch your events, timestamp the content of key highlights and in event breakouts and keynotes to promote on-demand viewing. Use these sound bites to promote on-demand viewing or even next year's event. Like promote your future events with snapshots of what folks missed at this great event. And lastly, you can develop Canva videos now that work really well in Twitter and Instagram with screen grabs that your point person captures during the event. My 4th tip is to latch on to the influencers in your B2B space. I'm sure you've all been doing this already, but the way that I like to recommend doing this is to use your subject matter experts as a host or a moderator. I'm sorry, do we have a question?
We do have a question, Matthew.
Sure.
Greg was asking if you could elaborate on the briefing book, what it is and the purpose.
Sure. Sorry about the rapid fire, everybody. You know, it's just one of those things when you get a roll going. The briefing book is really simple. You can make it a PDF, you can make it a Word doc, and you simply attach it to drive them to come. The key thing with a C-level person is they're getting something that shows them who's going to be provided. If you can, get snapshots, headshots of people. Each time you get a, yes, I'm interested in this event, ask for their headshot and bio and put it in there. Then alphabetize it, of course, and with the headshot, with the title, full title of the person's name, they see themselves amongst their peers. And you can also include, of course, the moderators. This is helpful for your sponsor. Your sponsor is going to love this piece. You can do a cover sheet. You can have your art department create artwork. All of these steps can be done through Canva if you have no art department. And most of these things can be completed purely within a Word doc or PDF. Any other questions before I go on? And so the answer is yes, I did say the new abnormal, Craig. I think that's exactly what we're heading into. And that's part of the reason why I think we need to partner with our influencers, because we really don't know where this is heading with events. You can't expect your influencers to write emails for you, right? It's your event. They're people you brought in from outside who have good lists, good Twitter followers, etc. Instead, provide your speakers and your moderators with easy to deploy emails and social media. When you include social sized images for them so the images work and so they're more apt to use them. If you seek out social influencers or speakers, leverage them not only for the content, but feel them out to see if they'll promote to their list. I think that's a really good use of your time. Get them to do that prep call I was telling you. Get them to record a promo. They can use that promo for themselves. It'll be them introducing their own event, but it's really your event. It works really nicely. And finally, I think I've taken plenty of time here, so thank you for your patience in getting through my 5 tips. But let's look at using a tech tool that works. This one's going to be specifically for those people seeking government C-suite people. It's called app.leadershipconnect.io, and I can put that in the chat. Building event marketing lead gen has never been easier thanks to this, and I have used it extensively. While it can cost, and I can give you more information about it if you're interested. The precision that some providers have now far surpasses what I have in the past. I want to give a shout out to Leadership Connect as a tool that builds lists so your clients can address, can have attendees at their lead gen or thought leader convenings. These people, you get right to them, you get right to their schedule and right to their assistant. If you're seeking high-level or even mid-level government attendees at your events, that is to say people with procurement dollars, Leadership Connect has been the place to go for me all year. It's been great. The interface for your marketing staff is easy to use. The details on each prospect are remarkable, including org charts with 2nd tier and 3rd tier attendee names, so your list is robust. If the top tier isn't going to come because you just kind of have a hunch, be sure to invite the 2nd and 3rd tier people. And in times like this, it's amazing to me that I can even get folks on the line, to be honest, or email to respond at all. These lists are solid as a rock. Now I'm going to hand it over to your questions. And if we don't have any other questions, Helen will be next. She'll give you a look at how to make sure you're emailing as many as possible of the right people via understanding your total addressable market and using inbound channels to complement email. Do you have any other questions?
Thanks, Matthew. I haven't seen any come in, so I'll encourage the audience to post in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask a question if you'd like. That was great rapid fire takeaways. Really appreciate it. I was typing up very quickly, trying to jot them all down, and I appreciate you sharing that resource in the chat as well. But I think we can go on to Helen's tips.
Great. Thanks so much. Thank you, Matthew and Stephanie. What I would like to focus on in terms of what's most important, we're seeing speaking to a range of different clients and companies as well who reach out to us for marketing advice and trying to understand where to kind of invest their marketing dollars and pounds and euros, is first of all to make sure that your marketer or your marketing team or yourself, if you're a very small business, you have a really good sense of your total addressable market. This is a term, I don't know how many people are like really aware of very kind of familiar with this term TAM, total addressable market. It's one we've heard a lot of, especially with the clients we work with who are either private equity owned or have private equity, ambitions to be private equity owned, where the private equity companies, the potential investors, are just obsessed with TAM. So what this means for a marketer is really understanding, what is that total possible market you could sell your product to, having a very, very good sense of how big that market is and how it's composed, what the profile is of the companies, the job titles, the seniority, the geographic spread as well, and understanding how much of that total addressable market you have already as customers, as engaged audience, and what your headroom is, and how big that total addressable market could grow in future. Because those are all the things that investors care about. And actually marketers typically, certainly the marketers kind of we talk to, don't tend to really see that as their responsibility, or they don't really understand what it is. And really that's all that really matters when you're looking to grow a business over the short, medium and long term. So really understanding what their total addressable market is, understanding how to segment it and group it into different audience groups based on their motivations, and then looking at how you prioritize those groups. And then back to Matthew's point, how you make sure that as you kind of work through each segment, prioritize segments, you have, for example, your priority A segment, that might be, the 5,000 companies you really, really want as customers, because those are the ones that really matter to you. Making sure you have every single one of those on your marketing database with all the correct job titles and all the right people, assuming this is all B2B, of course, and all the kind of decision makers. We know that in a decision-making unit in B2B, there's up to 8 people, quite often more. So it's important that you have that coverage so that you're touching all those influencers, all those decision makers with regular email communications. So looking at that kind of in a more scientific way, doing quite good gap analysis, having a very good sense of understanding where your opportunities lie, and also where your weaknesses lie, because where your weaknesses are, where your gaps are, is where your opportunities typically are, and really kind of getting marketing involved in that if they aren't already. That can really open up a lot of opportunity for your marketers to also be more strategic. The marketers we know, every marketer wants to be strategic, loves to be strategic. They don't just want to be doing tactical stuff all the time. So if you just give them like a day when you say, let's just focus on TAM today, let's do this, very exciting strategic exercise, it will not only be valuable for you as a business and you as a business owner, but also give them that kind of sense of being strategically driven, which all good marketers want to be. So that probably is one of the most important things we're seeing discussed at the moment, certainly, almost, at boardroom level and with the most senior marketers looking to grow their businesses. The other point that we wanted to cover was about using a range of channels. Email marketing is still, website's your most important marketing channel, email after that, and then there's a whole range of inbound channels. So what we mean by that is social media, PPC, also called biddable media, also called digital advertising, and also the kind of influencer type work that Matthew was talking about, making sure that you get beyond your database, because there might be some people who've unsubscribed, there might be some people you're not reaching. And that's really important also to reach your whole total addressable market, or more of your total addressable market, more of your TAM. So if you don't have the skills in your team, or you don't have the knowledge in your business on how these channels should be strategized and deployed, this is an area I recommend you invest in, even if it's just to get a sense of how you should be using those channels. Upskilling your marketers on those areas, maybe using, if you don't want to hire a social media person, just using an external person for a while just to kind of do a bit of test and learn. We're seeing those channels becoming much more important as people get kind of email fatigue. And then I think the final point, it's not quite 5 points, but all 3 stretched out, is around really applying the science of marketing. Marketing is art and it's science, but the science is really coming to its own now. The analytics, the data, the measurements. And when you're thinking about what metrics really count, it's about measuring the level of engagement of your most important priority segments within that TAM piece I was talking about, and the conversions and what's leading to those. Now that seems really obvious, saying measure engagement, measure conversions, but a lot of marketers don't do that or don't know how to do that. So equipping them with those tools and that knowledge and frameworks and kind of requirements to do that is really, really important, so that you can bring more science into your marketing and make it more data-led. That will enable you to see what's working, what isn't, do less of what isn't working, more of what is. It's kind of the 80-20 principle. And then you can make sure that your limited marketing resources are focused on the right areas. We spoke to a client recently who said, we're doing loads of marketing, we think it's working, but we're not sure which bits are working better than others. We can't really see or track what's working. And with a bit of work and expertise and techie people getting involved, we managed to get their marketing tracking, and they couldn't believe that actually it was almost exactly the 80-20 principle. Almost exactly 20% of their marketing was driving 80% of their results, and 80% of their marketing activity, their time, was spent on stuff that wasn't working. So it's really important you know what that is, and stop doing the things that aren't working is almost more important than doing more stuff that you think is working or is working. And that's a wrap. Do we have questions?
We do, and thanks, Helen. I appreciate those insights. One question from Chantal is, do you recommend any kind of tool for creating a marketing dashboard to collect data?
Absolutely. So we use Google Data Studio. Does anyone else, I don't know if any of you are aware of, it's one of the free tools within the Google suite. I think you can get a more advanced version by paying for it. I think we pay for a slightly more advanced version. It's not a lot of money. And the reason why we recommend Google Data Studio is because it very easily integrates with automatically integrates with Google Analytics. on your website, if you have that on your website, and also any Google AdWords stuff that's running. We've also successfully integrated it with various CRM tools, email marketing tools, so you can have real-time feeds going into your dashboard. We know a lot of clients have done this as well. You do need an analyst probably to work on this, or someone in your team who's really strong with, data tools. We do know that some fairly kind of amateur efforts have delivered some fairly good dashboards. So you don't have to be a very techie analytical person. You can create some really simple dashboards with, Google's help guides. There's a lot of help Google gives users on how to do these things, videos and how-to guides and stuff. So Google Data Studio, definitely. But we also recommend that you really think about 3 areas of measurement. And I think I might have said this before on a renewed roundtable, which is there's 3 very important areas to the science of marketing. It's the what, the so what, and the what now. The what is the data, the numbers, but they don't mean anything without context. The so what is the context. Is a higher number better or worse? Where is it in relation to benchmarks? And then the what now is, what are you going to do about it? What decisions are you going to make? What actions are you going to take? So a lot of the time you just see the what being covered without the so what and the what now. You really need to follow through with all 3 steps to get the value of that marketing measurement fed back into your business.
That's great advice. From our other panelists, any suggestions on data visualization tools? Bill, I know you guys at Mequoda love tracking.
Yeah,
all custom built.
yeah. Unfortunately, I can't say there's some fabulous off-the-shelf thing that we use, because it's very custom what we're doing by client and according to our system. So nothing to share there really. Although I agree with Helen, latching onto Google stuff that's free or low cost when you're already using other Google tools like analytics makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, and Google Sheets as well. If we manage a bunch of stuff in Google Sheets, and that feeds into actually that's quite an important back-end bits of the Google Data Studio to get the data structured. So, we have quite junior people straight out of university working on this stuff. It takes them about 3 months to train them up on some of the basic stuff. And they come up, if they're quite smart, as I'm sure they would be, they come up with some really clever stuff and just, discover it all themselves. And, all of this stuff hasn't come from me. It's come from people I've hired as grads and then given the tools and then given them some incentives to go away and do some smart stuff. And they've come up with some really clever things over the years. So I'm all for young people with, access to Google Data Studio and a good brief.
Yeah, I think I definitely will check that out. I know for us, when we were just realizing we're not tracking enough, is just getting started with something. So even if you pick 3 metrics and put them on a spreadsheet, that's better than nothing, and don't get too hung up on what are the right ones or what's the right tool. So we did have another question come in about what are your top measures of engagement. Helen, if you could elaborate on that.
Thanks, Carolyn. That's a tricky question, top measures of engagement. So it has to come back to the tools and the channels that matter most to you, because that's where your audience is engaging most. Obviously, email is a big one for everyone, right? So if we start there, that typically gives you a good health check as well as to how relevant your marketing is to your audience and how relevant your audience is to your marketing. So what we recommend you look at there is click-through rate these days. So how many people are actually who receive your email? What percentage of people who receive your email are clicking on it? Open rate and click-to-open rates, as of quite recently, are no longer very reliable because of Apple's latest iOS changes to how they allow people to choose their privacy settings. So be aware of open rates, be aware of click-to-open rates. If I were, were to recommend like one thing to focus on, it's click-through rates. The number of people who click on your emails. That also relies on having really good calls to action that people should be clicking on, right? And then the next thing after that, I'd say, is when you look at the number of people who are visiting your website, this is very kind of basic, rudimentary stuff, but it works, is number one, if you look at the amount of web traffic you have and it increases by 10%, the chances are your revenue will increase by 10%, like quite broadly speaking. So it's and the other thing is the number of people who look at more than, or percentage of your web traffic that looks at more than one page on your website. Because if they're looking at more than one page, then they are engaged. So these are like just really simple things anyone can measure and track in a, as Stephanie said, three numbers in a spreadsheet. And it might not give you bomb-proof, like amazingly sophisticated, insightful things to, decide what content to create, for example, but it gives you at the very least a health check. So that if you monitor the trends of those numbers, they should be staying the same or they should be going up. And if they're not, if they're going down, and if they're going down very quickly, you've got, you should do some diagnostics pretty quickly to figure out what's going wrong. Sometimes it's as simple as your website isn't loading up as it should. There's a web page, day by day, there might be just a piece of your website that breaks and people can't find stuff or see stuff, or your website suddenly becomes very slow. So usually we actually diagnose technical problems quite quickly if we kind of track on a daily basis those figures, just as a really simple exercise.
Great, and that actually,
go ahead. I think I'll just add, in Mequoda land, we track 4 key measurements from a very high level, which will guide you toward things you need to address. You can dig further down in them, and they are your Google Visibility Index, which is basically the extent to which your site is visible on search results for keyword phrases that matter in your space. The second metric we measure is the email capture rate. That is the incidence of capturing new email addresses of new unknown visitors to your website. The email retention rate is the third key metric we track. That's the extent to which you retain those you've captured on your email list. Typically, we're looking at a 30-day retention rate. And the fourth Uber metric that we track is the revenue per email subscriber. And those sort of guide us further down into areas where we might, if there's, if there's a challenge with one of those metrics, you can dig further down. But those are the 4 key. And I see Donna Jefferson's questions about how often you review these with the team. We do monthly meetings with our clients and internal to review everything that supports those 4 key metrics. And I think that's frequent enough for high-level metrics.
Yeah, I would agree. So, and also it depends on the product. So if you're marketing, if you have for specific marketing on a subs product, a membership product, or a brand or community, monthly. For events, we do weekly because of the pace and urgency. Yeah. But now it's Bill's turn. So I think it's enough time. So Bill will be talking about unsurprisingly email and the how to get really great copy into your emails to make them work really well.
Thank you to the co-presenters and Stephanie for setting this all up. I look forward to when we can do all this in person eventually. And thank you, all of you who are attending this free session. As Helen said, I'm Bill Dugan from Mequoda, and while some of what I'm about to share with you might be refresher content, I hope you get some new ideas about continuous improvement for your marketing efforts. I have 5 main points or takeaways to share with you. Number 1, staffing resources. Should you have in-house copywriting capabilities? And the answer to that is ding, 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 a resounding yes. The real question is, to what extent? You definitely need in-house copy editing and a copywriter's perspective for reviewing marketing emails, premium product fulfillment items, event materials, social media posts, etc. And every publisher and information provider should commit to internal resources for key copywriting needs, part-time or full-time. And depending on the size of your company, you can always choose to outsource larger select projects. And so my advice is, don't underestimate the importance of investing in copywriting and copy editing services internally. Words matter when it comes to selling your products and services and delivering them. Number 2, marketing strategy. email marketing frequency. How often should you email your list? Well, this is a contentious issue sometimes, but remember the old saying, out of sight, out of mind? It's not too different when it comes to email communication. Not in my inbox, who are you? The less frequently you email your list, the less familiar and less memorable you become to your audience. I read recently that a rather large consumer publisher had just cut back their email frequency to their customers from daily to weekly. That's a huge mistake, in my opinion, especially in this very competitive world. So what is the right email frequency? Generally, I think it's more than once a day. I don't know a single publisher who has suffered from email recipients unsubscribing at a higher rate than normal, which is usually the stated fear when you are sending 2 or 3 communications per day. Many publishers and information providers are horrified at the thought of emailing their list that often, but it works. You need to be sure that you have a sophisticated email newsletter preference center so that people can opt out of types of communications they feel aren't relevant. One publisher I know once told a complaining subscriber who didn't want to get so much email, look, if you don't want to get all of our promotional emails, buy a subscription. So my advice is try increasing your email frequency for a month, measure your, watch your unsubscribe rate, and more important, watch revenue rise. My point number 3 on copywriting. Don't forget, it's easy in our complex world, but my advice is don't forget the most powerful and important marketing words: you, free, and new. I don't know if you noticed, but in my introduction, I used all 3 of those words. Thank you for attending this free session. I hope you get new ideas. So while our methods for creating and promoting products and services have changed since the direct mail days, human nature has been pretty consistent about a few things. People like free stuff. They like when you talk about them, not you. And they like new things, especially when it's something exclusive or first dibs at something new. The most powerful marketing words: you, free, and new. Don't be shy about using them early and often when you communicate with prospects and customers. For example, instead of saying, we just launched a newsletter, XYZ, try saying something like, great news, because you're a customer in good standing. You're eligible for a charter subscription to our brand new newsletter, XYZ. So my advice is get back to the basics about focusing copy on your audience and liberally use you, free, and new whenever possible. Number 4, also about copywriting, is remember the purpose and power of email subject lines. You know, email is still a number one. It's a linchpin for most of us in our systems about how we generate revenue ultimately. The idea not too many years ago that email was some interim technology that would go away isn't happening. Even the younger generations, to some extent, have latched on to email. So the subject lines of emails are very important. And remember, the number 1 purpose of the subject line is to get the email open, so the recipient will read the rest of your message. Just like direct mail envelopes and the teasers on them had the mission of getting the envelope opened. You know, you don't need to tell everybody your whole story in the email subject line. And that is a common motivation for many of us, is to try to be descriptive or explain or tell what it is. What you really want to do is just pique their interest to get them to open the message. And so I'm a big advocate for using a free online tool called subjectline.com. It forces you to craft subject lines in ways that will avoid you going into spam and junk folders and that help get them opened. One of our winning subject lines is, you are invited, exclamation point. You can use that for all sorts of things: inviting someone to an event, inviting them to try a new product, inviting someone to take a charter subscription, etc. And if you're disciplined about crafting subject lines that do their job, you'll avoid getting sent to the spam or junk folder, and you'll get the message opened. And then number 5 on marketing strategy, my final tip here is what I think of as sort of a secret weapon of email marketing. And it goes back to a little bit about what I was talking about with email frequency, and we call it the echo effort. One of our best practices is to always send what we call an echo effort of marketing emails. For example, at 10 o'clock in the morning, you might send an email marketing promotion for one of your products or services or an event. At 5 p.m. that same day, echo that message by only changing the subject line to prepend it with last chance. For example, you might send an earlier in the day email, act now to get a half price special. At 5 o'clock, resend that message, suppressing those obviously who've already bought or responded or unsubscribed, with last chance. Act now to get your half price special. These kind of echo efforts often land the same number of orders as the original send, by doubling your response. And you can even surpass your initial send's performance. Another application of the echo effort is with premium product fulfillment. And this, instead of a sales strategy, is an engagement strategy. So you might send out your newsletter, your magazine's issue announcement to entitled premium subscribers. And then maybe 3 days later, did you miss this month's newsletter? Message to the non-openers of the original fulfillment sent. It's a great engagement tactic that can help with premium customer retention. Okay.
Those were great tips, Bill. I know I got a lot of insights from that. We had several questions come in. So a couple around copywriting. Have you ever tried A/B testing your outside copywriters against your in-house people?
Yes. And not surprisingly, with mixed results. It depends. I definitely think outside copywriters and the use of them is important, because you're going to get new perspectives. As long as you're following the traditional methods of educating an outside copywriter about your audience, your products, and your offers, it's definitely worthwhile, and you should test.
And how do you go about billing freelance copywriters? Are you varying messaging to work on specific projects? Do you augur for hourly or per project billing? How does that work?
Well, there are lots of ways, and it really depends on the outside copywriter. Many of them will work on a fixed fee project basis. Others I know work on a sort of minimum initial fixed fee, but then want royalties on sales. I know that can be a frightening thing for some publishers to think about sharing revenue endlessly with a copywriter, but that can just be built in as part of your marketing costs, especially if you get a breakthrough with some outside copywriter. The hourly rate is not as common, I think, with outside copywriters. Most want to work on a fixed fee basis, I think.
And Helen asked a great question here, one I've had as well. How about, what's the best way to recruit someone with good copywriting potential and then train them up quickly? Any good resources or tips for copywriting training?
That's a good one, because I'll say many copywriters, people who think of themselves as copywriters, want to work freelance and don't want to, join a team, a company's staff as an employee. So it's hard. I think the best way that I've ever seen is identifying internal staff who can be groomed that way. Someone who has a marketing perspective, who is a good writer. Maybe they have a journalism background, but isn't tied to pure journalism. And I think you can spot them internally at your company. I think that's the best way to get a staffer position of copywriting or copy editing.
Any tools or resources for how to get them trained quickly, particularly if you're bringing in somebody maybe with a journalism background that's not used to writing in a marketing call to action oriented type fashion?
They can attend Renewed's next
I didn't
copywriting
shamelessly
boot
get you to
camp.
plug that at all.
Well, I think, these kind of copywriting boot camp things are awesome, whether they're virtual or in the old days, pre-pandemic, there were in-person things. Immersing yourself around like-minded copywriters and learning is the best way in an immersive way. So I think that's the best way.
Yeah, I would second the learning from the experts and colleagues, and also just signing up for other e-newsletters. I mean, I'm on so many email lists, getting great ideas, and there's even if it's in a completely different audience or sector, where you can just change a couple of words and pretty much use the same copy. So
yeah, that's a good point, Stephanie, because
beg,
being
borrow,
on a lot of lists, and when you see someone repeating the same thing over and over, especially a reputable large publisher, that's something they probably tested and it's working. That's a great way to get ideas.
And maybe one more question, and then we'll go over to Lisa. How do you measure unsubscribes, particularly if it's done on the client side and not visible to the sender?
Well, it goes back to that metric I mentioned about the 4 Uber metrics, where we really try to look at email retention rate, because you can get unsubscribes a number of ways. You can get a global unsubscribe from someone who's doing that through their email platform where they block you. You can get unsubscribes from different segments. If you have a good preference center, not a full unsubscribe, but maybe they only want to get a weekly message from you, for example. So yeah, you can drill down into all of that, but the bigger measure, I think, is the email retention rate, which is going to incorporate not just unsubscribes, but bounces and just the healthiness of the engagement of your content. That's a great Uber measure, I believe.
I'll actually maybe tack on one more question related to that, because this was from Suzanne and addressed at Helen, but I think it's relevant to the unsubscribes and frequency of emailing in terms of sensitivities by audience or business professional or sector. Bill, I know a lot of your data is B2C, and have you seen any differences in sensitivities relating to frequency?
That's a very good question, because we do have a handful of clients who are B2B. And what we found is that sensitivity there is where we found challenges is around long holiday weekends. Surprisingly, or not surprisingly, I guess, the Friday before the 4th of July, if a lot of people in the States are out of office, you can get an incredible number of messages that just get missed because, they come back and their box is overflowing and your message gets missed. So I think the sensitivity there is around, because of businesses, around extended holiday weekends of any sort. Be aware you don't want to put your best messages out on the Friday before a long holiday weekend.
Great point, and easy to forget about that sometimes. Helen, you had mentioned in the chat that maybe it's more of a cultural or regional thing than sector specific. Anything you want to add to that?
I do think it is, because we do marketing internationally. So we market to Asia, Middle East, the US, UK, on behalf of our clients. Obviously, it's where their markets are based. And we definitely see a lower sensitivity in the US to marketing emails. Some European countries are extremely sensitive because of, all the publicity and laws around data privacy. But I'm not sure that's very relevant to everyone on this call. But there's definitely, we would have a different approach if we're doing marketing a product to globally. We would have a very different approach in the UK and Europe. We do fewer emails in the UK and Europe than we do in the US, for example. But then there are also some Asian countries where you can, again, email. You can do lots of emails and still keep the engagement up. So it really does depend on the region and more than the sector. I wouldn't say bankers are more sensitive than lawyers or more sensitive than nurses or anything, you know, all of those kind of niche business markets. It's very much from my perspective, this isn't kind of like bomb-proof statistical evidence. What we see generally, anecdotally, is it's regional or country-based.
For your B2B clients, are most of them emailing daily or weekly?
In the US daily, and in the UK, Europe, like maximum 3 times a week.
Great.
Can I ask you a quick question? We had a lot of results with weekend sends for a while. Have you seen a significant change in that, Bill? And if you have, do you attribute that to the pandemic and the fact that everybody's home? Did you do any weekend sends that worked?
Yes, and I think somebody in the chat was mentioning that it's not just about the volume, but it's about what you send. And often a weekend send that's delivering, that isn't just, you know, always a promotion, but delivering value and useful information. We do a lot of weekend sends to both consumer and business lists that are about getting a free report or a week in review, a week of the previous week's free content. You know, that's value. So it depends what you send, I think. And, you know, of course, the pandemic turned everything upside down. But I also saw, Helen, your comment about using other channels to build. That email is so important, and it's not decreasing in importance. And using other channels to drive site traffic, but getting email capture is still a critical part. Everyone's used to email. It's a common communication method, and you know, the pandemic only heightened that, I believe.
Great insights. So I think we've got about 12 minutes left. So let's jump over to Lisa's top tips and takeaways, and encourage everyone to continue posting in the chat. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can, and we'll also be on Guild afterwards to continue the discussion.
Righty. Well, thanks everybody. And I'm going to just give a couple insights, tips around making the most of the marketing resources. I think you've heard some, you know, some specifics about email, events, and your market. So now that you have an idea of what you should be focusing on, you know what you're measuring, you know where that focus needs to be. Probably one of the things is to look at your marketing resources, the actual people. You might be in a situation where perhaps you've lost an employee or a position over the last 18 months, 2 years with the crazy times. And now you're at a point where you're looking to build back your team. You might, you know, be like, oh, yep, we're going to refill this position. But before you post that position, definitely take a look at what your current business needs are, because likely they have changed since you last had that full marketing team. Make sure you know what exactly is really important that you need to have somebody cover that area of responsibility, and understand what skill set needs to be in that person so that they can, you know, be productive and flourish in that area of responsibility. And as you have those functions that they need to fulfill, look at those, and do you think that you can find somebody that has all those skill sets to meet those needs? That'll help you determine and do a pros cons list of are you going to look for someone who's a generalist that can hit more of those areas, and maybe you'll contract out for a certain area that maybe is more of a specialist role. I think in the past, some of us have really honed in on wanting to get a specialist, but then that kind of limits the areas that they can cover. And I'm trying to, you know, cover as many bases as I can. And so in our situation, we went for more of a generalist, but I knew that there were a couple of areas that I really needed to make sure the skill set was strong. So know where those are, and know what you can easily train within your organization, and what you know, you need someone to have that innate ability when you come in, that it would be harder to train. So once you have your team in place, how can you make the most of all the efforts that they're doing? One thing Matthew referred to earlier too is how to extend your marketing reach. So if you're an organization and you have publications that or webinars you're producing that have contributing authors, or speakers, make the most of their network. We find putting together specialized marketing packages for the authors or speakers that they can share within their own networks. You know, they're definitely looking to promote what they're doing in their either their profession, or if they're an expert in an industry, they welcome being able to show what they're doing and their expertise level. So like with authors, we'll put together custom marketing packages that will include a cover image of the publication. It will include a excerpt from what they contributed to. We'll make up ads, social ads, so that they could put them on their LinkedIn, or use them in any social media outreach that maybe they're not doing, but maybe someone in their office is doing on their behalf. So the key is to make it as easy as possible for them to either do it themselves or hand off to someone else that's helping them with their marketing. With speakers, we will do like a little a short intro, and so that they can feature that on there, and then all that will help with links back to your website for said publication, or to register for the upcoming webinar, which helps drive web traffic, capture names, all that good stuff. So it's a nice, easy way to make, get some more inroads in and capture new names that you might not already have on your list.
Just a quick note, we were doing that. We were adding, making sure that we had suffixes in the end, so we knew which authors and which speakers or which sponsors that content bounce to our site had come from, so that each time they sent it out on social, we knew which person. So be sure to change up that URL so that it gets to everybody. So you have your tracking on the back end.
Definitely. Then we kind of dovetails with a conversation around marketing and email and frequency and such. And so don't know about you, but we have a fairly robust product line that it's hard to get a dedicated effort in for each product each month. And for our audience, a lot of it is they're going to subscribe to a certain database when they need it. So it's, how do you make sure you're still front of mind, but they're not going to buy the database or subscribe until they actually need to use it in an engagement. So how do you, when you have so many products that you need to try to keep front of mind, and we prefer to do a dedicated effort for each, but that's just sometimes not possible. So if you don't have enough slots, consider packages. And that doesn't mean you have to sell the products as packages. It's more positioning them as maybe like a resource bundle, or related resources. Like these are our databases on discounts and premiums that you could use. So maybe somebody subscribes to one already, but you want to remind them about these other options, these other add-on industry intelligence subscriptions that we have. Kind of position them as like a package, like resources, maybe even on a topical topic that, you have a book, you have a upcoming webinar, and a database of data that can be used. So be creative in those, because then at least you're keeping as many products front and center in their mind for when that need comes up and they're looking, oh, I need a resource for this. And also it helps too, because like you probably, if someone subscribes, you don't email them when you're promoting that product. But this, it's like, if they're subscribed to one, at least they can they should see the relationship to the other products that are being promoted within that package. Then with lead gen, the lead gen component, we know sometimes with the emails, we'll get the dreaded bounced emails. And my advice to you is embrace your inner detective. With our market, we do see a number of our subscribers that bounce from firm to firm, or they go out and start their own. And so we keep an eye on those bounced emails, especially if they are paid subscribers. You're going to have some bounce emails for people that are just, they're prospects, they've never purchased or what. But definitely keep at least a focus on those hard bounces of people that have been subscribers, and do your research to find those. We have a couple of really talented people of researching those. People like to stalk people on LinkedIn and find them. And those are like really sales appreciates those. We hand those over to our sales team. They really appreciate those because those are individuals that are already familiar with your products. And so it's an easier conversation to get going. And you follow people that leave, and then you also know what firm they've left. So you can follow up with that firm to see who's taken their place to make sure you're maintaining the number of subscriptions and licenses at that current firm. And oftentimes that can also, oh yeah, we should actually add so-and-so as well. So it can be additional add-on sales at the firm that the person left from. And then finally, my one tip is around lead scoring. If you have a system, maybe a CRM or marketing or automation system that you're using to help send leads to your sales team, you can make use of lead scoring. And so much like your business changes, your scoring model should be reviewed and changed as your business changes. So it's not a set it and forget it. And when you're going to review that, I encourage you to also involve your sales team in that, because they will have definite insights from their perspective on what makes a hot lead and what they would like to see factored into the scoring model. I think we make kind of a double use of the lead scoring. There's a portion that we really dedicate and use as far as when we're transferring prospects over and qualifying them and putting them over to the sales team. But we also use scoring to help with the engagement, the marketing efforts that we're doing with prospects, trying to get them to that point with the handoff to the lead to the sales team. So sales might have some, I think in general, marketing and sales will agree on the activities that need to be in the lead scoring method and calculation. Where it might be a little bit different is the values that you assign to each of those activities, but look at that in the perspective of how the marketing team might be using the lead scoring as well as how the sales, and you can find a way to make it work for both aspects there. So those were kind of my quick little tips before we run out of too much time.
Those are great. Thank you so much, Lisa. We did have a question come in, which I think all of the panelists may have an opinion on. So what do you guys think about when it's worth putting an email capture form for access to content? And since this was from one of my colleagues, I can elaborate a little bit. So we were posting a lot of COVID content, and we knew we were going to give it away for free because it was the right thing to do. But we also had the question, we realized we were getting literally tens of thousands of visitors that were just coming and going. And probably a lot of that was not relevant traffic, but some of it was. So we debated, do we put up an email form and say you need to enter your email, then you get free access? Or do you just make it free and hope that the traffic uptick is worth it and that the right people will stay around and fill out some other email form or contact form or something on your website?
Always latch on, Stephanie, always latch on. You know, if you're going to give free things away, asking someone to hand over an email address in order to access it is, yeah, in that situation, you might have gotten some less qualified names perhaps, but otherwise, a lot of that's going to be lost traffic. So I would say always, always with something like that, include email capture. I mean, unless you're, if you are an advertising focused site and getting the eyeballs matters, that's a very different business model than most of us are in, where we're subscriber user based revenue is the primary driver. So building your list should be number one. I would never not do that.
Any other inputs or insights on that? So no free content unless I get your email address.
Well,
We
I'll
are
add a
very
little
generous.
bit. In that scenario, we did get some initial very strong opinions back saying, who do you all think you are? This is a worldwide global, health crisis and people are dying all over the place. So what do you mean using this as a marketing opportunity? Now, I think that was in the initial blush and maybe in subsequent efforts when we had some free content coming out, when it was less dire, let's say, we might have reverted back.
Well, I
to
think there is
have that.
a way to position that in a way that doesn't seem like it's marketing. Get this free guide on handling COVID in your emergency room, and we will keep you updated about, this is a fast changing topic area, and we will keep you updated by email. About
Sign here
this.
for the continued
Yeah.
updates, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I think it's about how you present it, not,
Yep.
it's how you phrase it.
I mean, you're always going to get complainers, right? Give someone $1 million and they'll complain it wasn't 2 million.
That's a great point. And I liked your point earlier, Bill, along those lines of, if you're complaining about getting too much email from me, then you should just subscribe and I'll stop asking you to. So
Exactly.
It's all about positioning and messaging and ignoring the complainers sometimes, I think. Well, we're at time, and I haven't seen any other questions come in. I'm sure there are many. Again, you guys were just amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and ideas. I believe you're all on Guild, so would encourage our audience to reach out and connect on there, continue the discussion. We appreciate everybody being here. Want to let you all know that we have several great events coming up, 2 next week, one on product launch and development, another on an events roundtable. We also have in 2 weeks, David Foster's On the Offense session coming up. So check out renewed.net/calendar. All of our upcoming events are there. We also have them listed on our Guild channel. So we encourage you to register and attend. We've got lots of great stuff coming up. We appreciate everybody being here, and thank you again to our panelists. We really value and are thankful for your insights. So good seeing everyone today. Have a great rest of your day.